Emily sat before her vanity mirror staring at her reflection with a mix of nervousness and excitement. Tomorrow was her big day, the day she would marry Michael, the man of her dreams. Her long journey of love, faith, and resilience would culminate in a beautiful ceremony everyone in the city had talking about. As she adjusted her necklace, her three closest friends, Sarah, Claire, and Jessica, burst into the room, giggling and full of energy. "Come on, Emily, you can't spend your last night as a single woman sitting here staring at yourself," Sarah teased, tugging her arm playfully. Claire added with a smirk, "We've planned something special for you. You're not getting out of it." Jessica chimed in, "Trust us, it's going to be unforgettable." Emily laughed, shaking her head. "You all are too much. But fine, let's make it a night to remember." That evening, the four friends headed to an upscale lounge, where the music was loud, the lights dim, and the atmosphere electric. Sarah had insisted on booking a private VIP section, complete with a champagne tower and an endless flow of cocktails. "To Emily," Claire shouted, raising her glass. "To her last night of freedom," Jessica added, her tone laced with a strange undertone that Emily didn't catch. As the night went on, Emily felt a warmth spreading through her chest. She didn't usually drink much, but the cocktails her friends kept handing her were too delicious to resist. Sarah leaned in close and whispered, "There's a surprise waiting for you upstairs." Emily blinked, her vision slightly blurred. "A surprise?" Jessica and Claire giggled. "Just go with it. You'll thank us later." Before Emily could question further, Sarah took her hand and led her up a flight of stairs to a private hotel suite. The room was dimly lit, with soft music playing in the background. A tall man with a sharp suit and a charming sipping a drink. "This is Ryan," Sarah introduced, her voice sweet but oddly insistent. Emily frowned, her head swimming from the drinks. "What's going on?" "Relax, Emily," Sarah cooed, guiding her toward the couch. "Just enjoy yourself. We'll be downstairs if you need us." Before Emily could protest, the door clicked shut, leaving her alone with the stranger. Panic bubbled up inside her, but her body felt heavy, her thoughts muddled. "Don't worry," Ryan said, his voice low and smooth. "You'll be fine." Emily's memory blurred after that. Faint images of the man leaning closer, his hands brushing against her skin, flickered through her mind. She wanted to push him away, to scream, but her body wouldn't cooperate. The next morning, Emily woke up in the hotel room, her head pounding. She was alone, the bed beside her empty but rumpled. The memories of the previous night were hazy, but the knot in her stomach told her something was very wrong. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, pulling her attention. She picked it up and saw a message from Michael. "Emily, I need to talk to you. Please call me immediately." Her heart sank. With trembling hands, she dialed his number. "Michael, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't believe this." Michael's voice was cold, distant. "A video of you with another man was sent to me this morning. How could you do this to me?" Emily's blood ran cold. "What? What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb, Emily. I saw the video. You betrayed me." "No, I didn't," she started, but Michael hung up before she could finish. Emily sat frozen, her world collapsing around her. Her wedding, her future, her love, it all seemed to shatter in an instant. The laughter of her friends from the night before echoed in her mind, and a chilling realization dawned on her. Her friends had planned this. What should have been the happiest day of her life had turned into her worst nightmare. Emily sat alone in her small apartment, her wedding gown hanging lifelessly in the corner. The day she had dreamed of for months had become a cruel nightmare. Michael, the man she loved, had abandoned her just hours before they were meant to exchange vows. She clutched her phone, rereading his final message over and over. "I can't marry someone I can't trust. Goodbye, Emily." Tears streamed down her face as she replayed the events of the previous night, searching for answers. The video Michael mentioned was a mystery to her. She had no memory of being with another man, only faint, disjointed flashes of the stranger in the hotel room. Desperation clawed at her, and she dialed Sarah's number. "Hey, Emily," Sarah answered, her voice dripping with fake concern. How are you holding up? How am I holding up? Emily snapped, her voice trembling with anger. What the hell happened last night, Sarah? Why did you leave me alone with that man? Calm down, Sarah said smoothly. We thought you'd enjoy yourself. You've been so stressed with the wedding. Enjoy myself? Emily interrupted, her voice rising. There's a video of me with that man. Michael saw it. He called off the wedding. There was a brief silence on the other end before Sarah replied, Emily, I don't know what you're talking about. Are you sure you're not overreacting? Maybe this is all just a misunderstanding. A cold wave of realization washed over Emily. Sarah wasn't shocked or apologetic. She was deflecting. Did you send the video to Michael? Emily asked, her voice deadly quiet. What? Of course not, Sarah replied too quickly. Why would I do that? Emily didn't respond. Instead, she hung up and immediately called Claire and Jessica. Both offered the same feigned sympathy, denying any involvement. But their tones betrayed them. False, rehearsed, and unconvincing. Determined to uncover the truth, Emily began piecing together the events of the night. She visited the lounge where they had celebrated, speaking to the staff. After some persuasion, a bartender confirmed that Sarah had slipped something into Emily's drink. Your friend said it was just to help you relax, the bartender said, looking uncomfortable. The pieces started falling into place. Emily's so-called friends had orchestrated the entire evening. But why? What could drive them to such cruelty? Later that evening, Emily received an anonymous message on her phone. It was a link to the video Michael had mentioned. With trembling hands, she clicked on it. The grainy footage showed her in the hotel room with the stranger, Ryan. Her body was limp, her eyes glazed over. The man leaned over her, touching her in ways that made her stomach churn. She felt sick. Another message followed moments later. You were never good enough for Michael. Now he knows it too. Enjoy your life, Emily. Emily's hand tightened around her phone as she read the message again. The truth was undeniable now. Her friends had done this to her. Sarah, Claire, and Jessica, the women she had trusted with her secrets, her joy, and her life, had betrayed her in the cruelest way imaginable. The next day, Emily confronted them. She called them to meet her at a cafe, masking her rage with calm words. Emily, you look awful, Claire said smugly when they arrived. You need to move on. Michael wasn't the only man in the world. Emily ignored the comment, her gaze icy. I know what you did. The three exchanged nervous glances. What are you talking about? Jessica asked, her voice wavering. I know you drugged me. I know you sent that video to Michael. Don't bother denying it. Sarah smirked, her mask of concern slipping. And what if we did? You always acted like you were better than us, Emily. Perfect little Emily with her perfect life. Well, now you know what it's like to lose everything. Emily's stomach turned, but she refused to let her tears fall. You're pathetic, she said, her voice firm. You ruined my life out of jealousy. But I swear this isn't over. She stood up, leaving her former friends behind. Their laughter followed her out of the cafe, but it didn't matter. A fire had been lit inside her. Emily had lost her wedding, her fiancé, and her reputation. But she wasn't going to let them take her spirit. One way or another, she would make them pay. Emily's life had fallen apart, but she was determined to survive. With her reputation in ruins and whispers of scandal following her wherever she went, she decided to leave the city. She packed her belongings, left her wedding gown hanging in her old closet, and moved to her Aunt Margaret's house in a quiet town hours away. Aunt Margaret welcomed Emily with open arms, her warm embrace offering the comfort Emily so desperately needed. You don't have to talk about it now, Margaret said gently, but just know you're safe here. Emily nodded, too tired to explain. She spent the first few weeks in bed, consumed by grief and shame. The betrayal of her friends haunted her, and the memory of Michael's angry words echoed in her mind. One morning, Emily woke up feeling nauseous. At first, she thought it was the stress, but when the sickness persisted for days, Aunt Margaret gently suggested she see a doctor. At the clinic, the doctor delivered the news. Emily was pregnant. Her heart sank. She felt overwhelmed by a wave of emotions: fear, shame, confusion. How could she raise a child under these circumstances? The baby was a reminder of that horrible night, of the betrayal that had shattered her life. But as the days passed, Emily began to see things differently. This child wasn't to blame for what had happened. It was an innocent life growing inside her, a part of her. Slowly, her despair gave way to resolve. She would keep the baby, not because of the circumstances of its conception, but in spite of them. Emily found work as an administrative assistant at a small firm in the town. It wasn't glamorous, but it was enough to support herself and prepare for her child's arrival. She worked tirelessly, finding solace in the routine and the knowledge that she was building a future for her baby. Months later, on a cold winter morning, Emily gave birth to a son. She named him Nathan. The first time she held him in her arms, tears streamed down her face. Not from sadness, but from an overwhelming sense of love and purpose. Nathan became the light in her life, a symbol of her resilience. Raising Nathan as a single mother wasn't easy. Emily faced judgment from neighbors and colleagues who whispered behind her back. But she refused to let their opinions break her. She poured all her energy into being the best mother she could be, and Nathan grew into a bright, curious child who brought laughter back into Emily's world. Her life was quiet, but she was content. She no longer cared about the opinions of Sarah, Claire, or Jessica. They were a distant memory, a chapter she was determined to close. But deep down, a part of her still burned with a desire for justice. Not for revenge, but to reclaim the dignity they had stolen from her. One day, while attending a local business networking event for her firm, Emily was introduced to a man named Christopher. He was tall, confident, and had an air of authority about him. Emily learned he was the CEO of Forex Bank, a major financial institution. Christopher stared at Emily for a moment, his brows furrowing as if trying to place her face. Emily felt a strange unease as they exchanged pleasantries, but she brushed it off. "You look familiar," Christopher said, his voice tinged with curiosity. Emily smiled politely. "I doubt we've met before." But as she walked away, Christopher couldn't shake the feeling. There was something about her, something that tugged at a buried memory. Later that evening, a mutual acquaintance mentioned Emily's name in passing, and Christopher froze. The name jogged his memory of a night long ago, a night he had long tried to forget. He asked more questions, piecing together the details until he realized the truth. Emily was the woman he had spent that hazy night with years ago. Guilt and shock consumed him. He hadn't known the circumstances surrounding that night, but now he understood the pain Emily must have endured. He decided he had to reach out to her, not only to make amends, but to see if there was any way to help her. Emily's life had settled into a rhythm, one centered on her son, Nathan, and her work. She had learned to push the pain of her past to the back of her mind, focusing instead on the joy Nathan brought her. That's why the sight of Christopher, the confident CEO of Forex Bank, at a work event had unsettled her. She couldn't place why he seemed familiar, but the encounter left her uneasy. For Christopher, however, all came flooding back. Years earlier, Christopher had been in Lagos for a high-stakes business trip. As the CEO of Forex Bank, his schedule was always packed, and he rarely took time off. His friends often teased him about being a workaholic, constantly glued to his emails and phone calls. "Chris, you need to loosen up," his best friend Daniel had said during one of their nights out. "You're always working. You'll turn into a robot if you don't start having some fun." That evening, after a successful deal, his friends had dragged him to a high-end lounge. The drinks flowed freely, and Christopher, usually reserved and cautious, had allowed himself to indulge. The alcohol dulled his senses, and his friends took advantage of his inebriated state to arrange a surprise for him. The next thing Christopher remembered was waking up in a hotel room with a pounding headache and hazy memories. He vaguely recalled a woman's presence, but had been too intoxicated to comprehend the situation fully. His friends had laughed it off the next morning, assuring him it was just harmless fun. Guilt had gnawed at him for days, but he buried it under the demands of his work, convincing himself it was a one-time mistake. Now, standing outside Emily's modest office, Christopher knew he had to face the consequences of that night. He knocked softly on the door and entered when she called him in. Emily looked up from her desk, her expression turning guarded as she recognized him. "Mr. Christopher, what brings you here?" He hesitated, suddenly unsure of how to begin. "Emily, I need to talk to you. It's important." Her brow furrowed. "About what?" "About us," he said, his voice strained. Emily stiffened. "There is no us, Mr. Christopher." "I don't know what you're talking about." He took a deep breath. "I think you do. That night in Lagos, I believe we've met before." Her face paled, and her hands gripped the edge of her desk. "What are you saying?" "I was there," he admitted, his voice low. "I was the man you were with that night. I didn't know then. I didn't understand what was happening. My friends arranged everything while I was drunk. I never meant to hurt anyone, Emily. I swear I had no idea." Emily's heart pounded in her chest as his words sank in. She stared at him, searching his face for any sign of deceit. "You're telling me that night was just some drunken setup? That you didn't know who I was?" "I didn't," he said earnestly, "and I'm so sorry. I know an apology can't undo what happened, but I had no idea you were drugged or that you were there against your will. I was reckless and irresponsible, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life." Emily stood abruptly, her emotions swirling between anger and disbelief. "Do you know what that night cost me? My wedding, my reputation, my entire life was ruined because of your recklessness." "I know," he said, his voice breaking, "and I'll do whatever it takes to make it right. Emily, I didn't come here to excuse my actions. I came to ask for your forgiveness. And if there's any way I can help you or Nathan, please let me. I owe you that much." At the mention of Nathan, Emily's resolve faltered. She looked away, her eyes filling with tears. "Nathan is my son. He's my world, and I've worked hard to build a life for him after everything was taken from me. I don't need your pity or your help." "It's not pity," Christopher said firmly. "It's responsibility. If I had known, if I could go back and undo that night, I would. But I can't. What I can do now is support you and Nathan in any way you'll allow. Please, Emily, let me be there for both of you." Emily didn't respond immediately. Her mind raced with conflicting emotions. Part of her wanted to push him away, to reject his help out of pride and anger. But another part of her, the mother who wanted the best for her son, couldn't ignore his sincerity. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she said finally, her voice trembling. "But Nathan deserves the best. If you really mean what you're saying, prove it." Christopher nodded, determination etched on his face. "I will, Emily. I'll prove to you that I'm not the man who made that mistake, and I'll do whatever it takes to make sure Nathan has everything he needs." As he left her office, Emily sat down heavily in her chair, her mind spinning. She didn't trust him, not yet, but for the first time in years, she felt the faint stirrings of hope. Maybe, just maybe, her story wasn't over yet. Christopher began proving his commitment immediately. He took on a steady presence in Nathan's life, regularly spending time with him, helping with daycare fees, and setting up a trust fund for his future. For Emily, his actions spoke louder than his words, though she remained cautious. One day, Christopher approached Emily with a proposal. "I know you gave up your dream of becoming a fashion designer. I've spoken to a few people I know in the industry. They're willing to mentor you and help you get back on track, if you're ready." Emily blinked in surprise, her defenses rising instinctively. "Why would you do that for me?" "Because you deserve it," Christopher said plainly. "You've sacrificed so much for Nathan. It's time you get something for yourself." After several sleepless nights considering his offer, Emily agreed. Christopher helped her enroll in a part-time fashion design course and arranged flexible work hours for her. Slowly, she began regaining the confidence she had lost. Months passed, and Emily's life transformed. She juggled motherhood, her job, and her classes with a renewed sense of purpose. Meanwhile, Christopher grew closer to both her and Nathan, never overstepping, but always there when needed. One evening, after a successful project presentation, Emily invited Christopher to dinner as a thank you. Over the meal, they talked about their lives, their hopes, and even their regrets. "I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive you," Emily admitted, her voice soft. But I can see you're trying, and I appreciate it. Christopher nodded solemnly. I'll keep trying, Emily. Not just for you, but for Nathan. He's the best thing I've ever been part of. As the evening ended, Emily felt a small but undeniable shift in her feelings. For the first time, she saw Christopher not as the man tied to her pain, but as someone genuinely trying to make amends. The foundation for a new chapter in their lives was quietly being laid. By December, Emily had built a new life for herself, with Nathan thriving and her fashion career gaining momentum. Just as she began to feel like her past was finally behind her, she received an unexpected invitation. Sarah, Claire, and Jessica had invited her to a Christmas Eve get-together at a luxurious beach house. At first, Emily wanted to decline. She knew their motives weren't pure. However, Christopher encouraged her to accept. "They're testing you, Emily," he said. "Show them you're not the same woman they thought they could destroy." Emily agreed, but not without a plan. Armed with the damning secrets she had uncovered about them, she prepared for what she suspected would be another attempt to humiliate her. The beach house was decked out in sparkling lights, the air thick with the scent of expensive champagne and catered delicacies. Emily arrived in a sleek, tailored dress she had designed herself, a quiet yet powerful statement. When she walked in, the room fell silent for a moment. Sarah, Claire, and Jessica exchanged glances before plastering on their fake smiles. Emily, you look different," Sarah said, her tone laced with condescension. "I should hope so," Emily replied coolly, taking a glass of wine from a waiter. The evening started with awkward small talk, but Emily could feel the tension building. Soon enough, the women launched into their real agenda. "So, Emily," Claire began with a smirk, "how's life as a single mom? Must be tough raising a child on your own." Jessica chimed in. "And what about your career? Still working as a clerk? Or did you finally decide to aim higher?" Emily smiled serenely. "Actually, I've been doing quite well. Nathan is thriving and I've started my own fashion brand. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you don't waste your time plotting against others." The women's smiles faltered. Jessica quickly changed the subject, but Emily wasn't finished. "Speaking of success," Emily continued, her voice sharp, "how's your job going, Sarah? Still managing to balance your accounts at work? Or should I say, manipulate them?" Sarah's face turned pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, don't play coy," Emily said. "Everyone knows about the missing funds at your company. If they don't now, they will soon." Claire stepped in, her voice shaking slightly. "Emily, this isn't the time for baseless accusations." "Baseless?" Emily raised an eyebrow. "Like your loyalty to your husband? I'm sure his political campaign would crumble if your little affair came to light." Claire's mouth fell open, words failing her. Jessica, now visibly uneasy, tried to steer the conversation again, but Emily turned to her with a cold smile. "And Jessica," Emily said, "how's your resume holding up? It must be exhausting keeping up the facade after lying about your qualifications for so many years." Jessica froze, her glass slipping from her hand and shattering on the floor. The room was silent except for the crackling of the fireplace. Emily set her glass down and stood. "You invited me here to mock me, to remind me of what you thought was my downfall. But the truth is, I've risen above it. Meanwhile, you're all drowning in your own lies. I'm not here to destroy you. That would be too easy. But don't ever think you can toy with me again. You might not like what I do next." With that, Emily walked out, leaving the three women in stunned silence. Outside, Christopher was waiting in his car. "How did it go?" he asked as she climbed in. Emily smiled, a sense of victory washing over her. "It went exactly as it should. They'll think twice before coming after me again." As they drove away, Emily felt a weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time in years, she was truly free from the shadows of her past. Chris' confrontation left Sarah, Claire, and Jessica shaken. They had never expected Emily to fight back, much less to have such damning evidence against them. As they sat together in the aftermath of the party, their fragile camaraderie began to crack under the weight of their exposed secrets. "This is all your fault, Sarah," Claire spat, her face red with anger. "You were the one who suggested we teach Emily a lesson in the first place." "Oh, don't start with me," Sarah shot back. "If I recall, you were the one who said it would be fun to humiliate her. You were so smug about how she'd never recover." "And you," Jessica interjected, pointing a trembling finger at Claire. "You were the one who suggested recording everything. That video is what destroyed her relationship." Claire rolled her eyes. "Don't act innocent, Jessica. You edited the footage to make it worse. None of us forced you to do that." The accusations flew back and forth, their years of scheming and jealousy laid bare. The tension reached a boiling point when Jessica, frustrated and cornered, snapped, "And let's not forget the irony. That man we set her up with, the one we thought would ruin her life, he's Christopher Blake, the CEO we see on TV every other week." The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. That can't be true," Sarah stammered, though doubt flickered in her eyes. Jessica nodded grimly. "It is. I looked him up after the party. He's the same man, and now he's standing by Emily's side, more successful than we could ever dream of." The realization stunned them. The man they had used to humiliate Emily had not only become her greatest supporter, but was also a powerful figure they could never hope to undermine. Meanwhile, Emily's relationship with Christopher continued to flourish. His unwavering support, coupled with his genuine love for both her and Nathan, broke down the last of her defenses. One evening, as they walked along the beach with Nathan, Christopher paused and turned to her. "Emily," he said softly, taking her hands in his, "I've made mistakes in my life, but loving you and Nathan isn't one of them. I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Emily's eyes as she smiled and nodded. "Yes," she whispered, her heart finally at peace. The news of Emily and Christopher's engagement quickly spread, sending shockwaves through Sarah, Claire, and Jessica's circle. Their worst fears were realized as their secrets began to unravel. Sarah's company discovered her embezzlement, and she was fired in disgrace, facing legal charges. Claire's affair was leaked to the media, causing her husband to file for divorce and derailing the politician's career. Jessica's falsified credentials were exposed, leading to her immediate dismissal and public humiliation. The trio's lives crumbled under the weight of their own actions, leaving them with nothing but regret and the bitter realization that their jealousy had been their undoing. As for Emily, she embraced her new life with Christopher and Nathan. Their wedding was a small but beautiful celebration, attended by those who had supported her through her darkest times. Together, they built a life filled with joy, proving that resilience and forgiveness could overcome even the deepest scars. Emily had finally found her happiness, while her former friends were left to face the devastating consequences of their betrayal.
Thank you for watching today's story. We truly appreciate your support. If you enjoyed this African folktale, make sure to check out more amazing stories right here on our channel, African Folktales by Shully. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new tale. Join our growing community and immerse yourself in the rich world of African folktales. Your support helps us bring more of these captivating stories to life. See you in the next video.